Hi, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or Poof 2. I love Poof 2, and I'm glad you're here to enjoy it with me. So, War of Immortals, Avenger class archetype. This is for the Rogue. I want to know what you think of the Avenger. I think it also used to be in PF1, because I never played PF1. Okay, I did, but I never played an Avenger. I played witches. Because that's what you do. You play witches. Yeah, anyway, so Avenger class archetype. Most people are aware of champions and clerics as the most obvious of a deity's divinely empowered servants, and those familiar with vindicators, previous video, as the more subtle arm of the churches might have generally grown to accept their necessity. There exists, however, other corners of religious power that churches may be less open about with their lay worshippers. Avengers are one such example. Sometimes known as slayers, that's what they were. Slayers in first edition. I think it was supposed to be like mage slayers kind of feel. Sometimes known as slayers among more brutal doctrines, Avengers are trained in remote monasteries or secret cloisters hidden from the eyes of casual passersby. They are indoctrinated in their church's teachings while being taught a variety of martial skills, many focused around mastery of their deity's favorite weapon. These training environments often also enforce vows of silence, vows of celibacy, or other practices intended to keep the Avengers in training from forming strong personal attachments. I want to be clear. It does not say that the Avengers, once they are done with their training, are still under these vows. This is just for training. However, it is interesting to me to have an Avenger that is a play off of those things, like still utterly silent all the time, just doesn't talk. Or the opposite. They were in training for so long and they had to be silent that now they want to talk constantly. It's like when a mime goes on break. So... And vow of celibacy does not mean no sex. It means no marriage. And so it could be that they are, and even were during training, extremely lustful. They just don't settle down. That's the point. All right. So they have additional feats. I'll go over them as we talk. First level Avenger. So... as I mentioned in other videos, class archetypes work just like the main class, except the changes that are listed in the class archetype. So if it's not mentioned here as a change, it works just like the rogue. So Avenger, first level. Trained far from watching eyes, you use stealth, intimidation, and deadly blade work to root out threats to your church. You must select Avenger dedication as your second level class feat. Prerequisites, you must be a rogue. Avenger adjustments. You must choose a deity to be a follower of. You are trained in intimidation, religion, stealth, the divine skill granted by your racket, and a number of additional skills equal to 3 plus your intelligence modifier instead of your normal starting skill proficiencies. So it kind of just chooses some for you. You must choose the Avenger racket below for your rogue's racket. You do not gain the surprise attack class feature. You gain the hunt prey action. Avenger racket. Trained to be a precise but brutal weapon by the priests of your faith, you eschew complex trickery for swift and deadly efficiency. It means you don't mess with being tricky. You just stab people really quick. Subtlety and deception have their uses, but when a false smile fails, your blades have their own way of finding the truth. They cut right to the source of the matter. You are trained in your deity's favored weapon. Whenever you gain a class feature that grants you expert or greater proficiency with simpler martial weapons, you also gain that proficiency rank with your deity's favored weapon. Which is cool, because you can choose all sorts of weird-ass weapons. Like the chakram. It's just a weird weapon. Unless you're Xena. You can deal sneak attack damage with your deity's favored weapon. In addition... Oh, there is a change here. Change the first sentence of the third paragraph of the Avenger racket to the following. So, third paragraph, 1, 2, 3. First sentence, instead of that, it says, you can deal sneak attack damage to your prey with your deity's favorite weapon in addition to the weapons listed in the sneak attack class feature. So the only difference really is that they have to be your prey. Basically it. When you critically succeed at an attack roll using the deity's favorite weapon and the target has the off-guard condition, you also apply the weapon's critical specialization effect. That's cool because it's from level 1. And that's handy. Like stunning people. You're trained in your deity's divine skill and medium armor. If you're already trained in your deity's divine skill, you are instead trained in another skill of your choice. You can choose strength as your key attribute modifier. When you gain light armor expertise, you also gain expert proficiency in medium armor, and when you gain light armor mastery, you also gain master proficiency in medium armor. So you're much more of a frontline combatant, but still roguey. Alright, so Avenger feats, we're going to start with the Avenger dedication, obviously. Level 2 feat. It has the Archetype class dedication, traits, and prerequisites Avenger. I'm not going to read that again. Your training regimen has given you particular advantages when it comes to enforcing the interests of your faith. You gain a +1 status bonus to saving throws against divine spells and effects that deal spirit damage. Just divine spells. Ugh. You can use religion to coerce, gather information, or track as long as you are in a town or city with a church dedicated to your deity, extracting clues from the faithful displays of your piety. Okay, I really can't explain away how you can use religion to track unless you're actually talking to people. So I guess that still has to be in a town or city with a church dedicated to your deity. It's kind of a shitty restriction. I don't like that. In fact, I don't like this dedication at all. Okay, you get +1 against divine spells. Why not just like +1 against on spells? And just remove the other part, because it doesn't really come up unless you're in a city that has it. I just hate that restriction. You've heard me talk about this with Vindicator. It's just not going to happen in every adventure. And so your GM has to just be willing to work with you and put it in the adventure. Ugh. Not a fan. Okay, so the additional feats, all of the additional feats, deal with using 2 weapons. Twin takedown, twin parry, twin riposte, second sting, and improved twin riposte. If you want to use 2 weapons as a rogue, you can take this instead of flurry ranger or instead of fighter. I mean, the 2-weapon fighting is a lot of fun, and it does give you perks. But because you get access to so many 2-weapon feats through this archetype, I kind of would only take this archetype if I'm planning on using 2 weapons. Because otherwise you're not gaining all the benefits for it. It's the main appeal to me, at least. Alright. Level 6 feat. Zealous inevitability. 1 action. It has the flourish trait. Requirements. You are wielding your deity's favorite weapon. Flavored weapon? Tastes like deity. Yummy Sarenrae. Flourish just means that you can only use this once per turn. You channel your zeal through a sacred weapon, bringing a foe closer to their demise. Strike a target with a required weapon. On a success, the target becomes doomed 1 or increases the value of their doomed condition by 1. Most living creatures die when they've reached doomed 4, because doomed gets added to your dying value. Creatures doomed in this way take a status penalty to their saving throws against divine spells equal to their doomed value. Okay. Do you get divine spells? Nope. So it's just to help your divine spellcasters in your group. That's awesome. A creature that would become doomed 4 by this strike can attempt a will saving throw against your class DC to avoid increasing the value of their doomed condition. When this occurs, this ability gains the incapacitation trait. That will hardly ever come up unless you are on a solo assassination mission. Because you have to be able to do this only once per turn, 4 times, and successfully hit them to make them doomed. If you're with your party and 4 rounds go by and this thing is not dead, you're not winning. It just doesn't matter much. Sure, it will sometimes come up, but for 6th level feat, that's a flourish, so it pretty much dictates that's what you're doing that round. I mean, of course you can make other attacks, but not other flourishes. It's just not an amazing mechanic. Plus, most NPCs, monsters, enemies, things you kill, don't go to a dying value. Once they hit 0, they're just removed from the board. because they're not special enough to rate to rate dying or wounded. So it has to be a creature that is your level or lower, because the incapacitation trait means that they will always succeed if they're higher level than you. So it can't be against a boss. And it has to be someone who matters enough to have a dying or wounded condition value when they're dropped and not just be removed from the board, or they have to survive 4 rounds of your entire team attacking them. It's just not common. I don't think it's useful. Level 8 feat, Silence the Profane reaction. Trigger, a creature you can observe within your reach or within your weapon's first range increment. If you are wielding a ranged weapon, cast a divine spell. Requirements, you are wielding your deity's favored weapon. Your training included instruction on how to prevent enemy priests from using their magic against you, a technique you have now mastered. Make a strike with the required weapon against the opponent. If the strike is successful, the triggering spell is disrupted and the target is flat-footed for 1 round. It's like the Vindicator ability, but crappy, because it's only against divine spells. Now me, as a GM, when I'm looking for spells to put up against the party, I'm not thinking, like, I don't know, harm. I'm thinking fireball. I'm just not going to have an offensive divine caster, except rarely, because they're going to be healing people. Okay, so cool. It might stop somebody from getting healed, and that might be a major component of that fight, and that could really help. This is just crappier than the Vindicators. And it's the same level. Why not just remove the restriction of it being a divine spell? Okay, it is useful against all devils, demons, fiends, celestials, angels. If it's a fiend, celestial, or monitor, they're casting divine spells. So this is useful against them. In my adventures, that would actually be quite useful, because I love fiends. And I will throw them against the party and against the enemy because they're fun. But if you're not fighting against fiends or monitors or celestials, it's uncommon that it's going to come up at all. It is cool that it can be within the first range increment of a ranged weapon if you're using your deity's favored weapon in a class that's based on using 2 weapons, and you happen to be using a bow as your favored weapon. This doesn't make sense. There are too many hoops to jump through. It's too much. Too many restrictions. Just remove the casting a divine spell and just make it any spell. It's so much more useful that way. Next feat, level 10, Shadow of Death. Strikes you make with your deity's favored weapon against a creature with a doomed condition have the death trait, causing the target to be instantly killed when reduced to 0 hit points. When killed in this way, attempts to communicate with it, return it to life, turn it into an undead, or otherwise disturb its afterlife fail, unless the effect's counteract rank is higher than half your level when you killed the creature, rounded up, or originates from an artifact or a deity. As I said before, most enemies, when they reach 0, are just dead. This doesn't do it. It's like taking the worst parts of the assassin and shoving it into a new class archetype. Come on, this has to be better than this. Level 12 feat, Slay, 2 actions. Requirements, your target is doomed 2 or greater. So you spent 2 rounds using that flourish to make them doomed. You finish your target with a vicious attack. Make a strike against the target. If you hit, the target takes 4d6 extra precision damage with a basic fortitude save against your class DC. So they could just take half of that. Or none of it, if they critically succeed. If the target critically fails, they die. This is an incapacitation effect. The creature then becomes temporarily immune to your slay for 1 day. That is actually useful. It's still hoops to jump through, but it's useful. Obviously not on a boss, because they cannot critically fail. But doing extra damage if you've hit them twice? Cool. It sucks that it takes 2 actions. Like, especially if you're using twin weapons, two weapons, you're probably using twin takedown instead. Yeah, okay. It is a strike with any weapon. And it doesn't say a range. So you could use a bow. And that's cool. There aren't a lot of ways to get extra bow damage besides Eldritch Archer. Okay. Level 12 seems a long time to wait for that feat. And that's it! That's the whole class archetype. Yes, there's other stuff here. It technically applies to fighters, rangers, rogues, and it does not have to be part of this class archetype. That is everything that is for this class archetype. Fail. This needs some overhaul to be useful. All right, I will read the additional feats because these are useful for fighters, rangers, and rogues in general. And they're an interesting new mechanic. Well, not new mechanic. They are an interesting way to fight. All right, so level 4 feat, Haft Striker Stance. 1 action, fighter, ranger, rogue, and it's a stance. Requirements, you are wielding a two-handed hammer, spear, or polearm. You enter a stance that allows you to leverage the haft of your weapon to brutal effect as an effective and frighteningly efficient weapon in its own right. You treat the haft of your wielded weapon as a simple weapon, dealing 1d4 bludgeoning damage. The haft is in the club group and has the agile and finesse traits. The haft shares any fundamental runes attached to the main weapons, so long as it would normally qualify for them. That's awesome. When in Haft Striker Stance, you can use feats and abilities that normally require you to be wielding 2 melee weapons, each in a different hand, treating the haft as the second weapon, and it gets all the runes. But you can't use abilities that require you to be wielding a two-handed weapon because of the stance. That makes sense. You can always step into a different stance if you want to, or stop doing the stance. This is very useful for the fighter class archetype in this book. Not really for this one. Yes, there are 2 weapon fighting feats for this archetype. So I guess, sure, maybe you could do that if you want. If you happen to find 2-handed hammer, spear, or polearm because it does extra damage, great. But the fighter class archetype is based on using a polearm or spear. So it's better for them. They just keep pretending to give stuff to this class archetype. Next, new feat, level 10, Haft Beatdown. 3 actions, fighter, ranger, rogue. Prerequisites, Haft Striker Stance, the one I just read. Frequency once per minute. Requirements, you have to be in that stance. The momentum of each of your attacks feeds into the next blow in the routine, creating a brutal rhythm that enables you to give your target 1 continuous beatdown. Strike twice, once with your weapon and once with its haft. Each attack counts toward your multiple attack penalty, but do not increase your penalty until you have made both attacks. Then strike twice again, once with your weapon and once with its haft. So you get 4 attacks out of 3 actions. Yes, it's good. For this archetype, I don't think so. It's action compression, I think is what I heard someone say. Yeah, it's giving you an extra action, basically, if you're only doing this. Once per fight. Again, it's good for the fighter class archetype. Lastly, I will read you the Shadow of Sarenrae. For many years, I killed without hesitation at the behest of a cult who claimed to serve the Dawnflower. My people are good. My goddess is good. Surely any actions I take on their behalf, no matter how grim, must also be good, no? Such was my thinking until I met Kira, and she revealed the hypocrisy in my thoughts, and in the actions of those who trained me and pointed me at my targets. I see now that the shadow I walked in was not cast by my goddess, but by her flawed mortal servants. I will be a blade for a goddess, but I will not kill for the whims of men. What then am I to do? What life is there for a man trained since birth to bring death, whose heart belongs to a goddess who demands that we offer redemption? I love that! Great philosophical take, Zadim the Avenger. I like the flavor of this. Not a fan of the mechanics. Unless you want to be a rogue and use 2 weapons. Cool. Thank you for joining me for the disappointing Avenger. I'm sorry. It's just not great. Yeah, talk to your GM. See if you can modify it a little bit to not just require the divine spells, but just any spells. But still, it's based on dooming people. And it's not great against just fodder fluff monsters. It's just not. That's why the assassin isn't that great. Anyway, tell me what you think about this compared to the Slayer it used to be. I bet it used to be way cooler. If you're a patron, thank you for blessing me with your patience and attention. You care for this channel, but also my home and my kitties. And dice. You get dice. It's good. Dice are good. So the 31st of October, this month, you know, Halloween month, we're doing a drawing on the 31st. There'll be a 2-hour live stream where I will draw 3 winners that are subscribers to get blood spattered dice. A 9-piece set, like this one here. That's the D2. Because it's a coin, because it's a D2. It's blood, whatever. And a 45mm blood spattered die, that big. And a set of 6 D6. If you would like to enter into the drawing for this dice, and you are a subscriber of this channel, and you have changed your subscriptions to be public, you will need to make a comment in the following video. There is a link here in this video. And here's War of Immortals playlist, if you want to see that too.